Assalamu alaikum. Hello, everybody. This is Rafat Al from the Islamic University English Department. This is a course on an advanced course on Shakespeare. We already started Shakespeare's masterpiece, Hamlet. We had an introduction, and last time we examined and explored Act 1, Scene 1. We discussed issues related to the structure of the play briefly, but we focused on how Shakespeare opened the play, how he used certain literary devices. We examined the language, the kind of poetry he uses, the setting, the foreshadowing, the use of the ghost, and we also examined something related to the fact that the ghost does not have to be taken as a literal ghost, because I don't believe in ghosts. Some of you might believe in ghosts, but this ghost could be the shadow, the heritage or the legacy of somebody who died, but who left a lot of burden, a lot of responsibility, who left a lot of things for the offspring, for the children, for the daughters, for the sons to do. These things could be bad and they could be good, because we don't know what's going to happen. We also examined something related to the fact that, again, the play begins somewhere in the middle. When I asked you to guess where Hamlet is going to start, some of you suggested, old Hamlet being alive, Hamlet, his mother, his father. But all of a sudden, we have a scene at night in the dark. It's cold. Two guards speak. The poetry doesn't flow, fragments, so many questions. And there was no Hamlet. He was nowhere to be seen. The man whose name appears on the title page, because the play doesn't say Hamlet, because if it says Hamlet, like in the Merchant of Venice, we don't know who the Merchant of Venice is. We're not certain. Some people say it's Antonio, but some people say it could be Shylock. But when we say about Hamlet, the full title is Hamlet, the Prince of Denmark. So we know this is about Hamlet, but where is Hamlet? He is nowhere to be seen. Before I begin analyzing issues in scene 1, scene 2, I want to ask you, especially those who had a lock at scene Act 1, Scene 2, what are the similarities? What are the dissimilarities? How is scene 2? Let's focus on the dissimilarities and the differences. How is scene 2 different from scene 1? If you didn't have the time to look, this is where scene 1 begins. The stage direction says Claudius, King Claudius, Queen Gertrude, advisor Polonius, his son Laertes, and Hamlet, and some attendants. So scene 2 opens with the king. This is the speech here. So can you compare? Can you remember the first scene, the first page of Act 1, Scene 1? There was something special, many things special. Mariam, what do you have to say?
Okay. There is like something clear that the language gets sophisticated to sophisticated language. We have here poetry rather than prose.
Okay, thank you very much. So the shape, how do you know that this is poetry, Mariam? Can you tell your friends?
There's like iambic pentameter.
How do you know? There is something easier. Can somebody tell? How do you know that if this is poetry or not, Arij?
Each line start with the capital letter.
Excellent. Arij Masharawi says, when you learn the rules of capitalization, when you write poetry, traditionally, classically, each line should begin with a capital letter, no matter whether this is the beginning of a new sentence, the middle of a sentence, preposition, noun, or verb. So if you look here, and this is the easiest thing, first thing you do when you look at a Shakespeare, because most of Shakespeare's plays are written in poetry, in verse, iambic pentameter, blank verse, but sometimes you can find some prose. The first thing I do is look at the shape. So like Mariam suggested, this seems to be very organized, very regular. So it looks like a poem, huh? But is it poetry? How can you tell? You look at the first letter of each line. Look, the, though, the, to, yet, there, together, therefore, etc. So these are lines that begin with a capital letter. So this is poetry. So poetry, very regular. Reem?
Yeah, I would say the atmosphere is different within scene 1 and scene 2. Scene 1 has more than 4 characters, and their speech is too short, and we have too many question marks. While
Just one, Reem,
yes.
when I ask you a question, give me one answer. Don't be greedy. Give me
Okay.
one answer so we understand your point instead of giving me 100 answers.
Okay, scene 1 has 4 characters, and their speech is too short. While scene 2 opens with a long speech with sophisticated and lyrical
There is a long.
words of the king.
You already mentioned 3 things, Reem. Focus. No, speech 1, scene 1 was, short and interruption, question and answer. Who's there? Nay, who's there? Long live the king. But here there is a long speech. الله يعطيك العافية. هيك بتكوني وفيتي وكفيتي. Long speech, short, interrupted. Nobody is interrupting here because the king is speaking. Who would be, willing to interrupt? So poetry. Reem says. Nermeen says. Is it Nermeen Zarab? Wala Reem Zarab says poetic. Poetic. And starts. Nahil says starts with a formal dialogue, formal speech. Ari suggested that this is poetry. Also, Mariam said this is poetic, and it's long. Arij?
The thing is that the first scene starts with soldiers. They were outside, but here and there it was cold. Here we have a court that is warm, and there was a marriage. So
Arij, still
yeah.
we don't know. We haven't read first. Okay, we first look
okay.
at the things what we can see before reading. Excellent. This is inside. This is inside. This is probably warm. There are many people there. That was outside, outdoors, cold. Okay, and maybe remember the chain of being. The king is on top of the chain of being, but the soldiers may be near the bottom. So we move from the lowest level of the society, maybe close to the bottom, and then we have the king top, very opposite. So there is a stark difference. So actually, stark difference is everything is different. I'll just go very quickly to see what we have here. So the king is speaking. We understand that there is, like you suggested, there is a marriage. I'm sorry, you all know the story, the plot. You know that what happens. So there are no spoilers. I like it when students don't know what happens next, but everybody knows what happens next in Hamlet. You already studied something in the introduction course about it. So he begins with though yet of Hamlet, our dear brother's death. Our here, this is called regal. Regal, regal, the royal. Regal, we, regal, our. هي بسميها الملكية. نحن الملكية. نحن الحسين. He doesn't mean us, everybody. He means our, we, because he's the king, he's the greatest, he's the top. Though yet, look at the beautiful language, the poetic language. Though yet of Hamlet, our dear brother's death, the memory be green. Look at the beautiful language. The memory is green, is a metaphor, because the memory is abstract. It can't be colored. يعني انه اخويا هاملت اللي مات لسه ذاكرته طيبه، ذكراه حاضره. And that is us befitted to bear our hearts in grief, and that's why I am sad. And our whole kingdom to be contracted in one brow of woe. We are all sad, the whole kingdom. He speaks for all. Yet, however, so far have discretion fought with nature that we with wisest sorrow, look at many paradoxes here. The wisest sorrow, think on him. We think we are sad, but we are wise. We don't let sorrow and sadness stop us from living, prevent us from living, together with the remembrance of ourselves. Therefore, our sometime sister, and this is really interesting, we'll talk about this in a bit. Our sometime sister اللي كانت أختي قبل كم من يوم, he means sister-in-law, his brother's wife, now our queen. She's now my wife. So it's poetics, beautiful, the language is beautiful, but it's paradoxical. Like, my brother has just died, and I have married his wife. The imperial jointress to this warlike state have we as twere with defeated joy. Look at another paradox. Usually joy is not defeated. Joy is joy. Joy is victorious. With one auspicious and one dropping eye, like one eye. Look at the beautiful paradox. One eye crying and one eye happy. With mirth in funeral. Mirth means merriment, happiness. Mirth in funeral, another paradox. A highly paradoxical. Probably this is the most paradoxical speech in all of Shakespeare, especially in Hamlet. Mirth in funeral. We are happy in funeral. Only a sick person laughs in a funeral, right? Faraju al-Limbi, and he makes fun and they're laughing during a funeral. This is a sick person. And with dirge in marriage. Dirge means sadness. Usually we are merry in marriage and we are sad during the funeral, but he's doing the opposite because we'll know why this is happening so soon. And then he goes on and on to talk, and then he talks about his brother and his business. Remember, the king killed King Fortinbras long time ago when Hamlet was young, was just born. But and then remember we were told by Horatio last scene that the young Fortinbras is waging a war against Denmark. He wants this land back. He wants to take revenge. So what does the old king, Hamlet, do when he comes back from the dead as a ghost? He comes as a military leader, wearing, the military gown. But this man is a man of business. If you look at the speech here, he keeps using the word business, business, business. He's a man of diplomacy. He's a man of words. He's a diplomatic person. So he says, what does he do? He doesn't say, we will fight, we will beat those people. He says, to Norway, uncle of young Fortinbras, who impotent and bedrid scarcely hears of this his nephew's purpose to suppress his further gate herein. He says, in other words, I'm sending two people here, good Cornelius and Voltiman. Forget about the names, they're not going to come back just one time later on. For bearers of this greeting to old Norway, giving to you no further personal power to business. So this is a man who wants to do business. He doesn't want fighting. He doesn't want war. He wants to solve the problem peacefully by doing some kind of diplomacy. But his speech is extremely paradoxical in the sense that it contradicts scene one, act one, scene one, and at the same time, the language is highly paradoxical. I'm summarizing this, the main issues here. So we have scene two contrasts dramatically with the first scene. There are lights here. There is warmth. Somebody, thank you for saying warm. It's warm inside. It's cold outside. There are colors. This is a celebration. The mood is different. People are celebrating. But who are celebrating? Who are the people celebrating? The king, the queen, Polonius, Laertes, and the attendants. But there is one person we'll see who is not. So the new king opens the scene with a long speech. The speech is highly poetic. Perfect blank verse, too perfect to be improvised. This clearly is a speech that is rehearsed. planned and carefully delivered to present a king that is strong, that is poetic, that is in control, in command of his language and his people. So in other words, the speech is so perfect that it tells the king might be hiding something. Yani he is careful to be very meticulous, very careful about every word, every phrase, everything he says. Maybe we don't know. He's hiding something. He wants to be perfect, so nobody talks about him. The most significant thing is that it is full of or with paradoxes. Many people will ask this question usually: why isn't Hamlet king if his father died? Right? Isn't he the prince? That's a very interesting question. Listen, number one, Denmark was an elected monarchy. Yani usually the son becomes the king. However, some kind of election, internal election takes place. Usually the son of the king takes place, succeeds. تعرف الفعل succeed معناها يرث. successor غير ينجح. successor معناها وريث. لما أقول Hamlet did not succeed his father يعني Hamlet لم يرث عرش أبيه. successor. So Hamlet did not succeed his father. Somebody else was elected. And this tells us about like many things about Hamlet and King Claudius. دلوقتي ألطف حاجة في in the whole play in Shakespeare's in Hamlet is that the name Claudius was not mentioned at all in the play. ولا مرة. In the whole play, not once was the name Claudius for the king, Hamlet's uncle, was mentioned. I don't know why. So Denmark was an elected monarchy. It means that Claudius was carefully planning this. He was cunning. He prepared for this. When Hamlet was away in Wittenberg in Germany studying, having fun, we don't know, you know, this man was preparing himself to be the king, to succeed his brother. It shows us that also maybe that Gertrude maybe naively helped Claudius in a way. Why is she marrying the man? And I talk about something more serious in a bit. And it seems to suggest that Hamlet was not politically savvy. Hamlet was not smart in politics. If he was smart, he would be always close to his father, would make sure that he is loved and supported by the people. So when his father dies and there is an election, they can choose him to succeed his father. But maybe his father died too early. Maybe his father wasn't too old. And he indeed wasn't too old. He wasn't sick, at least. So Hamlet was in Germany. More commentary on the speech. The speech, remember again, is highly poetic and in blank verse, very unlike Act 1, Scene 1. The speech is too perfect to believe, so eloquent that it is clear, it is rehearsed and planned again and again. It's not improvised. لا يوحي إنه هذا الخطاب مرتجل. It is full of paradoxes. When I ask you for textual evidence, you just don't tell me it's full with paradoxes or full of paradoxes and that's it. High wisest sorrow, defeated joy, mirth in funeral, and dirge in marriage. You show me that you read. They permeate the speech everywhere. But clearly, King Claudius, whose name is not mentioned in the whole play, not once, is a man of diplomacy, unlike his brother, old Hamlet, King Hamlet, because we've seen how he's a man of war. He killed another king, and he even when he came in the shape of a ghost, he was wearing the you know the clothes or the stuff of a fighter, a warrior. Instead of preparing for war, he sends messengers to young Fortinbras's uncle to solve things diplomatically. He uses the word business twice in his speech. So he's a man of business. Now, two things we want to say. Part of the paradoxes here are due, like the paradoxes, some of them could be due to the fact that the marriage took place very quickly. يعني كأنه like people are still sad and now people are happy celebrating. So the marriage came in the middle of, you know, of the sadness of the funeral, mourning the king, الحداد على الملك. But more importantly, at that time it was considered to be a taboo. ايش يعني taboo؟ haram, forbidden, illegal, not allowed for a person to marry his brother's widow. It was considered to be incest, illegal, taboo, by law, by rules, by customs, by traditions. But what's going on? A man, the king, who is supposed to be guiding the society, protecting the laws, he is the person breaking the laws. He is
But
the
he isn't
person
the king yet. He wasn't
breaking.
the king.
He is the person breaking the rules, King Claudius. And why is everybody clapping and celebrating? Because it shows that the people around him either too hypocritical, munafiqeen, they don't want to tell the king, hey, excuse me, please, you're doing wrong. Even religious people around the church, what are they doing? Why don't they say something to the king? Or maybe they are too frightened because he is a tyrant. Maybe he's, you know, maybe they are complicit. Maybe they don't care, as long as, because they are selfish. They don't want to say something to the king to make the king, you know, dismiss them and kick them out. And in many ways, this is a political issue from Hamlet, because sometimes in England, the queen would change everything, and people around the king or the queen would be okay. No worries, no worries. Go on. No worries about what you're doing. So this is a beautiful way, an implied criticism from Hamlet to the politicians, to the counselors of the king or the queen, because he is suggesting that when the king does something wrong or bad or even taboo, nobody is going to say anything to the king. Look at how beautiful. It's not clear. He doesn't say, oh, king are bad because they, he's doing it he implies it. Even not many people will be able to see this or understand this. And that is one interesting political statement. طيب. Before we move, does anybody want to say something?
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Okay, now he wasn't the king, right? His brother's late wife was the queen, and he had to marry her to become the king. He wasn't the king yet, so he broke the law as a person before becoming a king. People should have said something, and also like they had another candidate who's Hamlet. They could have chosen him if if, if he didn't follow the law, right? But they didn't that. Maybe because they were hypocrites, as you said, or maybe because like he had so much influence in them, but it doesn't
It's clear that he's a man of cunning, a man of wit. He is a man of diplomacy and a man of relations who would please the people, his circle, would give them probably money and privileges and everything, so they keep silent about this. But that's a technicality. Was he married yet or wasn't he married yet? Still, marrying somebody's a person's brother's widow was illegal at that time. So doing it was a taboo. So this person, a man, this king who became a king by doing something illegal, something that is not lawful. And nobody seems to have said anything about that. The process of choosing the king, of crowning the king, is not here. Shakespeare doesn't say anything about it. He leaves it for our own imagination. And that's the beautiful thing about good literature and Shakespeare's literature. He raises many questions, so we think, why isn't this happening this way? So we search. Reem, briefly.
Yes, about Hamlet's mother, I think she has something wrong, or she did something wrong, because what she did is could seem like illogical to the human being nature. So think that you are a mother and your son is to be the king, but you choose to marry your dead husband's brother, and then he becomes the king.
Yeah,
So I think
that's a very
there
beautiful
is something
question.
wrong.
There is, we don't know. We don't know what happened. Let's wait and see. If it's in the play, we can discuss that. If it's not in the play, Shakespeare leaves this for our own imagination. Okay, Gertrude, you could have, yani she probably, if maybe if she didn't agree to marry the king, Hamlet could have become the king. Or maybe if she hasn't agreed for Hamlet to marry Claudius, tamam, maybe he would marry somebody else, and she's not going to be the queen, and Hamlet is going to lose. Maybe she is thinking strategically in the far future. She marries Claudius. When Claudius dies, it's going to be Hamlet. So we look at this. We can't take things just one way. Yes, there is some. Why are you remarrying very quickly? Listen, we don't know how long it has been until the king died. How long? Was it a year, 2 years? Let's wait and see. But let's see what my point, Reem. Yes, why are you doing this? But
Yes,
some people say, wait a minute, don't judge her very quickly. Maybe she saw that whether she marries Claudius or not, he's going to become king. If she doesn't marry him, maybe Hamlet is going to lose his chance of becoming a king when Claudius dies. So she marries him for the sake of Hamlet. We don't know. Mariam, briefly.
Yes, I want to say about the reaction of the attendants. I don't think that monarchy pays attention for people's opinions. They just like play with them. You know, in the age of Henry VIII, he converted to Protestant in order to divorce his wife and marry another one, and then his daughters fluctuating between Protestant and Catholic. So just monarchy like playing with people. They don't
It
wait
was,
for.
yeah, we could, okay, they could be, they're playing with the religion and everything. If the king says so, it must be correct. And the other thing is that we could say those people are, the politicians are hypocrites. But we could also say, because you brought Henry VIII, because Henry VIII, if you disagreed with him, he would kill you. So maybe those people lived in terror, lived in fear. Ahmad, briefly.
Yes, like why we don't think that the queen was in love with Claudius, and that's why she agreed to marry him.
Possible, yeah. We didn't say she wasn't. It's not there. We'll see later on when we examine the relationship between, was the queen really in love with Claudius? Why did she marry him? We'll see what the text tells us, and we then can leave the rest to our own imagination. That's a
But the
good
audience
point.
that you written or that you mean is the people who are around the king, not everyone. It is meant for the people who are around the king that shares the
Yeah,
praise, the
his
higher praise.
advisors and everything.
Yes,
Taib, I want to move to the next point for the sake of time. What do you think? What do you notice here? Please try to raise your hand before you answer. Look at this text. What do you notice? The speaker is the king.
Shall we answer?
Take your time. Take your time. Wissam.
Yes, I noticed that the king talks to Laertes before the talk to Hamlet is son.
No,
son.
Wissam.
Yes.
Look at me. You know me, all of you. You know me already. I don't have to explain everything again and again. When I ask you to look at something, you look at it exactly, the piece I'm giving you.
You mean the form?
What here in the what can you see in what you can here in this slide? What you said is good, but it means you read something and you're not noticing, because in the exam I'll give you this extract and I ask you to comment. So what is going on in this extract? What do you notice about this particular extract?
I can say many questions here.
There are many questions. How many questions? You don't be specific.
4.
Very good.
4 questions.
Very good. Excellent. So there are 4 questions.
And
someone
also
else.
he wrote in verbs.
خلاص يا أبو سام. Always give me one answer, 1 point. Somebody else next.
Yes.
Ahmed, go on.
Poetic language.
The language is poetic. Very good. One more. Mariam.
Yes.
Go on, Mariam.
He doesn't give a chance to letters to reply. Yes, he doesn't give a chance to letters to reply.
Laertes. He doesn't give him the chance to speak. Okay. He keeps talking and ask a questions. غيره.
He is as if putting him in the corner.
Wala. Please don't answer unless I ask you to. Wala.
Yes, he repeats Laertes' name like many times, like 4 times, and he repeats the pronoun you also 2 times, please.
بعدين معك يا ولا. بعدين معكم يا جماعة. Please give a chance to your friends to say answers. Don't be greedy when you participate. بزعل منكم. So Wala noticed that the word Laertes is repeated how many times? How many times?
3 times.
4
3
times.
Wala 4.
4 times in the second
1,
line,
2,
third
3,
line,
4 times. Oh, very good. Very good. What else? Noor.
He started his speech with a first person narrator. We.
He started
his speech with a first person narrator. We.
Had a first person plural or singular?
A plural.
Plural. Who's the speaker here?
But he is the king. So why he is not use I?
Why?
I don't know actually.
تو حكيتها يا نور، يعني مش منتبهة معي. ايش اسوي لك طيب انا عاد؟ تو حكيتها.
منتبهة يا دكتور.
لا مش منتبهة، تو حكيتها. ايش سميناها هذه وي توي؟ ريم.
نحن.
Like regal.
We call it regal we. Regal we. I just mentioned this. Regal we. The king he's the king. So he wouldn't be saying I. He speaks for all. He's the spokesperson for all. Okay, one more. Reem.
Yes, it seems that Claudius holds Laertes the responsibility of not making like not succeeding with talking to the Dane. When he said you can't speak of a reason and lose your voice.
I don't know what you're talking about. You're not clear. It doesn't make sense to me.
It seems that Claudius holds the responsibility to Laertes that he doesn't succeed with talking with the Norway.
Dane?
And lose your voice.
Dane is Denmark. Dane is Denmark.
Yes, I say with talking to the Norway.
Where is Norway? What does he have to do with Norway?
He's supposed to talk to them about the dead king.
No, he's not. Where do you get this from?
When he's asking, what's the news with you? You can't speak of reason and lose your voice.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
I
he's
don't think
mistaken.
that.
Fine. Anyway,
I don't think that
so
records
forget
his
forget
voice.
everything Reem just said, because I don't know what she's talking about. But the thing here is that the king finishes his speech. He talks to his two ambassadors. He sends them to Norway to negotiate with Fortinbras' uncle to stop the war. That's good business. He started by mourning his brother, celebrating his marriage, and announcing that he is the king. He's already the king, but this is more of something about the marriage itself. If if I am in the classroom, I would ask you, who else do you expect him to talk to? And usually I did this last year, and many students said after this, the king would be at least talking to his wife, inviting her to speak, right? Or to speak to Hamlet, or to speak to one of his advisors, right? But he doesn't do this. He talks to Laertes. Laertes is the son of his advisor. He doesn't talk to one of his advisors. He doesn't talk to the queen, his wife. He doesn't talk to Hamlet, his nephew. He talks to Laertes in a very strange way and seems very formal. He says he uses his name one, two, three, four times. Very intimate. He brings him closer to him. So what is it? What's up with you, Laertes? You wanted to say something to me. What is it that you have in mind? And look at this beautiful poetry here. The head is not more native to the heart, the hand more instrumental to the mouth, than is the throne of Denmark to thy father. Meaning, your father is good to me, I am good to your father. So what wouldst thou have? What do you want? This whole stanza is, hey, hello, Laertes. You wanted to say something to me, but like somebody suggested first, he talks too much. He doesn't give a chance to Laertes to answer. Question, 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 question. And I think there is a reason why he's doing this. So if you look here, the other thing pointed out by Wala is the use of you, you, you. How many yous are there? Three, and then three. Like he used thy father and he used thou. There is a huge difference between thou and you. Can somebody tell
He repeat the sound of T more than you.
the
And
sound?
then, and
But
so
the
on.
word, we're focusing on the word you, Mariam.
I think when you said the one you speak to is so great, or you like appreciate him.
Mm.
And about thou, it's like for anyone.
Okay, at that time, you was uh, like you use it among equals in a way. So he's bringing Laertes to him. He's bringing him up to him. He uses thou. كم مرة بستخدم thou؟ مش عارف أنا. هي thou and thou, because at that time you and thou were close, but you was new to the language. It was all thou before. It was many people, like writers, started using you, and then so sometimes you, sometimes thou. In many ways, when he finishes the speech, he doesn't speak to his wife, the queen, or any of his advisors. He talks to Laertes. Laertes is the son of his advisor Polonius. In my understanding, he seems to be, trying very hard to avoid talking to Hamlet, to avoid looking Hamlet in the, because if you watch the play, did you watch the play? Hamlet, everybody's celebrating and happy and dancing and drinking and eating and laughing, except Hamlet, who was wearing black and in the corner, still in mourning over his father. So clearly, the king is trying to avoid him, to talk to anybody except to Hamlet. So the king seems chatty with Polonius, with his son Laertes, 5 times he used the word, the name Laertes. 5 times in 11 lines. That's interesting. That's very intimate. That's very. واحد منكم لما when a teacher uses your name, you feel happy. Oh, the teacher knows my name, says my name. But imagine if the king does this. The king uses thou twice when talking to Laertes. Thou was considered to be informal and friendly than you. He used thou, and he actually mixed between both of them. But we'll compare this with Hamlet. But you was a word that started to be used new. It was newly used in the English language. فكلمة جديدة أي حاجة جديد بيكون شوية formal. But that was an old word, so it turned to be a little bit informal. The king seems to be too intimate, but also the king seems to be trying to avoid talking to Hamlet. And this is what we want to compare here. So when he, of course, Laertes says, my king, my dear, my lord, I want to go to France. He says, okay, go. And look how he talks to Hamlet. And this is the first thing, the very important thing. The first thing that Hamlet speaks was in Act 1, Scene 2, line 65. The king says, take thy father our Laertes, time be thine, and thy best graces spend it at thy will. So he's talking to Laertes, and suddenly he moves and speaks like an afterthought, speaks to Hamlet, and he says, but now my son, my cousin Hamlet, and my son. But now my cousin Hamlet, قريبي ابن أخويا Hamlet, cousin means nephew here, and my son. ماشي المثل ايش بيقول اللي بيتجوز امي بقول له يا عمي. So here he married his mom and he calls him, you become my son, right? This is the opposite. If I marry your mother, you become my son. This is what he's suggesting. And look at this aside. Very interesting thing. Aside, I'll explain the difference in a bit. But aside, the actor is on stage with other actors. He takes an aside, يعني يتنحى جانبا بلف راسه شوية here, probably directing herself to the audience. And the people on the stage are not supposed to be, listening to this, to what he says or she says. Usually the aside is short, brief, unlike the soliloquy. The soliloquy, the actor is alone on the stage. It's usually long and it usually has inner thoughts and inner conflicts. We'll talk later on in more detail about the soliloquy. So when the king says, my son, ya bnayyi, Hamlet says something that is described by critics as mysterious and enigmatic. A little more than kin and less than kind. A little more. Look at this beautiful language. A little more than kin, أكثر من kin. إيش يعني أكثر من kin؟ يعني king مثلا ولا kind. And less than kind. إيش اللي أكثر من kin؟ kind. طب إيش اللي أقل من kind؟ kin. So what is he saying? Now, honestly, I read so many things about this. Many critics say we don't know what Hamlet is saying because this is some kind of a puzzle, a riddle. But the fact that this is not clear, it tells us, can you mute please, everybody? So I don't hear to my ugly voice. Listen to my ugly voice. A little more than kin, يعني ممكن تكون يعني بس بقول له انت my son، ايش يعني kin قريب. فبقول له a little more than kin، انا اكثر من kin، يعني بطلت انا قريبك وابن اخوك، انا صرت ما شاء الله صرت ابنك هيني. And less than kind, but I am not going to be kind to you, or you are not a kind person, a kind king. Or maybe Hamlet is saying a little more than kin، انا اكثر من kin. ايش اكثر من kin؟ احط لها حرف الجي ولا حرف الدي؟ لانه هان بيقول لما قال kind قال less than kind. So many critics say We don't know what Hamlet is saying exactly. But the interesting thing is that some critics say this is an aside, but other critics say no, this is not an aside. إذا كانت aside كمان مرة Hamlet took aside on the stage and said it under his breath حكاها إيش بصوت بسيط. And if he did this, it means he is kind of threatening the king a little more than kin, and less than kind, you know? But this is beautiful. If it is an aside, it means that Hamlet is reaching out to the audience, is telling his secret, telling the audience that I don't like this king. طبعا احنا عادة إذا احنا جمهور فعلا أول ما نشوف الملك we will not like him because of his paradoxes, the hypocrisy, his lies. The language was too poetic, too artificial to believe. He was not credible in many ways. We didn't like that he talked to Laertes before talking to the queen, his wife, or talking to Hamlet. So when Hamlet tells us as audience that in other words, I don't like the king, we kind of like him, we kind of identify with him. But some people, some critics say, no, this is not an aside. Yani Hamlet replied to him to his face. قال له في وجهه. When he said, my cousin Hamlet and my son, Hamlet said, a little more than kin and less than kind. وهذا حقيقة could be like presenting Hamlet as powerful and, daring. He doesn't fear the king. He insults him to his face. But honestly, this contradicts with the fact that Hamlet, with the idea that about Hamlet being hesitant, the idea that Hamlet is not a man of action. Hamlet is more a man of words than a man of action, as we're going to see later on. So when he tells the king a little more than kin and less than kind, in my opinion, I think this is an aside. He takes an aside, reveals his dislike to the king to the audience. But what does he say to us? He says some things beautiful, سهل نحفظها, a little more than kin and less than kind. But what does it mean? It could mean many things, many things. But one thing is certain, Hamlet loves to use language in a poetic way, loves to play with words, loves puns, and loves puzzles a little more than kin. A little more than kin is kind or king, and less than kind. But less than kind, يعني أنا صحيح أنا صرت like your cousin and your nephew and your son, but I don't like you in my heart. To me, you're not somebody that I like. So how is it that the clouds still hang on you? And I love this question from the king. بقول كيف the word you is at the end of the sentence, like he's distancing Hamlet from him. He's saying, how is it that the clouds still hang on you? The clouds, the dark clouds. يعني Hamlet, why are you still wearing the black? Your father just died some time ago. Why aren't you happy and celebrating and dancing and drinking? And what does Hamlet do? He hits him with another pun. He hits him with another sentence, probably more powerful than the first. Not so, my lord. I am too much in the sun. I am too much in the sun. And if you remember in the poetry, usually the word sun is a pun. تعرف الشعر العربي ايش بيقول؟ فإنك شمس، بيقول الملك فإنك شمس والملوك كواكب. In England, the sun is usually a pun with Jesus Christ, but also the sun is the king. فهاملت هذاك بيقول له ليش الغيوم، يعني ليش ضايل بتحوم حواليك غيوم الحزن والسواد والى اخره. Hamlet says, not so, my lord. I am too much in the sun. And I think there is a threat here. لأنه sun ممكن تكون son، يعني أنا بشوف كل واحد بيقول لي يا ابني. My father, my mother, and you. So I am everybody's son. Or maybe he's saying, I have had enough of you, the king, who is usually likened to a son, because you are the king, you're everywhere, you're powerful. The first interaction between the king and Hamlet tells us a lot about Hamlet. He's a man who loves to play with words, a man of puns, a man of puzzles, a man of mysteries, a man who is also courageous. In many ways, this is a reason why the members of the audience would like Hamlet, would love Hamlet, because usually we don't like. احنا تلاقي اغلب الناس بحبش رئيس الوزراء والرئيس وكذا، بنحس انه like politicians are corrupt, they are bad. We don't like them. And this is Hamlet talking tough to the king. That would be really, really, really fun. So the king and Hamlet. The king chooses to ignore Hamlet and talk to Laertes first. The king's talks to Hamlet seem distant, careful, rehearsed, and very cold. Remember when he said, "How is it?" He put the pronoun at the end of the sentence as if pushing Hamlet to the end. And he used you, which is formal. The king's talk with Hamlet came brief and as afterthought to the talk with Laertes when he said, "But now, my cousin, Hamlet and my son." The king seems to want to distance himself from Hamlet when he put the pronoun at the very end of the question. And when he asked him last, notice the use of you and how it is delayed to the end of the sentence. He seems to be hiding something. He doesn't want to talk to Hamlet. And he uses, like I said, the formal you. The king's idea that we all shall die. Later on, the king here says to Hamlet, "Why are you sad? We are all going to die." And the queen is going to be saying the same thing. "Hamlet, don't be sad. We are all going to die." This is a horrible idea to use to somebody who has just lost his father. If you say, it's different here as Muslims. بنقول والله كلنا إلها إلى آخره. بس لما نقول واحد ليش زعلان, don't be sad, don't be mourning, don't mourn your father. We will die soon. Let people be sad, let people mourn. And now when the queen sees how Hamlet is being tough and rough with the king, she interferes. تقول له, "Good Hamlet, cast thy nighted color off." يعني cast ارمي القي يعني زيل ألقي عنك night يعني من night من الأسود من السواد من الليل ألقي عنك لون السواد يعني كأنه بتقول له يعني تخلى عن الحداد and let thine eye look like a friend on Denmark. Denmark مش مقصود فيها عن Denmark الملك King Claudius. وانظر كصديق إلى الملك, تعامله كصديق. Do not forever with thy veiled lid seek for the noble father in the dust. أبوك مات والله يرحمه صار في التراب. Thou knowest it's common. All that live must die. Passing through nature to eternity. كلنا إلها يما, كلنا حنموت. And this makes Hamlet furious, angry. He says, "I, look at this. He doesn't say mom, an expression of madness. I, madam. صحيح. Madam. It is common." But if you examine this, if you look at the
انت
راح
قديش
حشيش
لك يعني؟
وسكروا الاوديو يقدر قدوا سكروا الاوديو. So Hamlet uses the word common also as a pun. So far he used the word kin, kind, son, and the word common. But the word بعدين معكم. But the word common Hamlet uses means prostitute. And some people think that Hamlet is insulting his mother because she insulted his sadness, his love to his father. She tells him, "Your father is dead. We are all going to die. All all that live must die. كل حي سيموت. كل نفس ستموت. كل من عليها فان. All that live must die." Beautiful. So he says, come on. You come on. أفنان بالله يسكر إلا الصوت لو سمحتي. Okay, and Hamlet again uses a pun to attack and insult his mom, and sadly probably nobody is smarter than Hamlet. Maybe they don't know what's going on. So she says something that even makes him angrier at her. If it be why يعني هو بتقول له Yeah, she says it's common. He says yes, it's common, but he uses common as an insult. And she says, if it be طيب يا أما إذا كان الإشي شائع, if we are all going to die, why seems it so particular with thee? إيش معنى أنت اللي عامل حالك زعلان وحزنان على أبوك? Why are you still sad? Why are you still mourning your father? But look at what she does here. She uses the word seems. لماذا يبدو عليك الحزن? And this drives Hamlet even, angrier and crazier. يقول seems, madam. كانها بتقول له يعني you're pretending to be sad. Seems, madam. كان بقول أتظاهر. كانوا سؤال بقول لماذا يبدو عليك الحزن؟ إيش معنى أنت؟ He seems. No, it is. كانوا يقولون أنا لا أتظاهر بالحزن. أنا حزنان. أنا في الفعل حزين على والدي. I know not seems. أنا بعرفش أتظاهر. بعرفش النفاق. Look at every word he says. He's insulting her. He's clearly angry at his mother. It is not alone my inking cloak, my good mother. حتى لما يقولها mother, my good mother. Oh my God. Nor customary suits of solemn black, nor windy suspiration of forced breath. No, the fruitful river in the eye, I'm crying rivers here. Nor the dejected behavior of the visage, together with all forms, modes, shows of grief that can denote me truly, these indeed seem. People could pretend to be sad, could pretend to cry, for they are actions that a man might play. People might pretend to wear, black, to pretend to cry, but I have that within which past show my heart. I am distraught, I am sad inside. These but the trappings and suits of woe. I am really sorry for the death of my father. I am not pretending, my mother. It doesn't seem, he seems to be angry because probably this is a sign of love. He is in love with, he loves his mother. And his mother doesn't seem to be the smartest woman. She doesn't know how to deal with her son. She doesn't understand him. Everything she says makes things worse. And this is the summary here. And oh my God, I'll just 5 minutes and we can stop. I was planning to finish this the whole scene, but we'll stop at this and I can give you some time to comment after just I go through this. So Gertrude, the first thing she says to Hamlet is like, number one, stop being sad for your father. But she doesn't make things good. She complicates things. She asks him to be good to the new king. Let thine eye look like a friend on Denmark. Denmark here is السنكدقي, مجاز مرسل, referring to the king. When Gertrude says death is common and that all that live must die, she infuriates Hamlet, making things even worse. Hamlet hits her with yet another pun. Common, meaning prostitute or whore. His fourth pun in 3 lines. Even worse, she accuses him of acting. Why seems it so particular with thee? Why seems, the word particular, the word seems, again make Hamlet even angrier. At this moment, Hamlet hits the roof. He becomes very angry. He hits back at her, defending his mourning for his father. Seems, madam? Nay, it is. I know, not seems. Later, Hamlet adds, these indeed seem, for they are actions that a man might play, but I have that within in my heart, in my mind, in my conscience, which past show. Yani it can't be acting. I am not acting, mom. I'm not pretending to be sad. However, when his mother tells him, Hamlet, I don't want you to go back to Germany. I want you to stay here in Denmark. Stop, delay, put off your study, suspend your study, remain, stay close to me. He says he agrees to stay in Denmark and not to leave for his studies at Wittenberg. We're not sure why this is, why she asked him to stay, to look after him, or did the king tell her to keep Hamlet around for something? We don't know. No matter what, clearly Hamlet, like some of you will say, come on, Hamlet, you are rude. This is not the way you speak to your mom. That's true. But probably this is a sign of attachment, a sign of disappointment. He's disappointed in his mother. Why would you marry this man? Why would you marry after my father died? Maybe there are other reasons we can discover later on. Only she can move him, can stir his emotions and his feelings. Finally, we spoke about the aside just now. I'll repeat this again. The first sentence said by Hamlet, uttered by Hamlet, is one we need to remember and memorize. It's very interesting. A little more than kin and less than kind. What does it mean? And is this an aside? Do you agree that I could ask you this question in your exam? Contextualize or comment critically, or I could ask you a direct question. Is this, what do you think? Could this be an aside or not? You don't tell me both. You choose one opinion and you defend it with the ideas. Here is a summary of what you could think of. So Hamlet starts by interrupting the king, perhaps. The first thing Hamlet utters is enigmatic, mysterious, secretive. It's not clear. It's easy to understand. Like, look at this. But what it means could be many things. A little more than kin and less than kind. Some critics insist that this is not an aside, indicating that Hamlet is courageous. He's courageous, who is not afraid of the king. He talks to the king. He confronts the king. He tells him, I don't like you. He tells him, I am more than kin. Maybe I should be the king or something. He tells him less than kind. I am not going to be kind to you, or you are not kind. You're not a human being. Yet others insist it is an aside, which corresponds perfectly with Hamlet's character as a man of words, not a man of actions. And this is good because it brings Hamlet closer to the audience and to the reader. So the aside is an attempt from Hamlet to win the readers, to win the audiences, so we can identify with him. Hamlet declares a verbal war against the king. Hamlet is somber, he's dark, he's bitter, he's sad, he's mourning. When everybody is celebrating, he's not. Hamlet fires back at his mother. Even his mother, he doesn't care. He shoots, he uses all his weapons, and his weapon is the language. He uses puns like kind and kin and son and common. I was planning to finish this act, but I don't want to keep you more than this. There are many comments here. I want you briefly, in 3 minutes, 2 of you or 3 of you maximum, to say something. Go on, Ahmed. Ahmed, briefly.
Yes, about Ken, maybe he's someone proverbial at that time.
Possible, yeah, possible. But I'm not aware of this. Somebody else? Anybody? Somebody want to say something? No? Should we stop? Thank you. We'll stop here. I'll try to upload part of the presentation and the video, and we can continue scene 2. But for next class, please prepare. What do we have after this? We're finished with Act 1, right? No, we're not. I want you to prepare Act 1, Scene 3, and go through Scene 2 again. And we have Scene 4. Oh, Scene 4. So try to prepare Act 1, Scenes 3 and 4. يعطيكم العافية.
دكتور شغلة سريعة قبل ما تطفي يا رب. معايا دكتور؟
Go on.